Matt Canavan, Linda Scott and you at home, exactly the way that we like it this particular Monday night. So news poll tells us that things are back to 50-50. Now, one of the reasons why the Prime Minister's turned around and said, I'm going to rule forever, is I've never lost a news poll, which that's never been a problem for a Prime Minister in the past, setting news poll as the sole determinant of things. But still, coalition vote, 39%, with preference discipline, put simply, out of One Nation or United Australia Party. That's pretty damn competitive. However, of course, the race to 76 seats is all about the end game. The Teals would be an issue there. But, Matt, I want to ask you, again, you know, people who would consider themselves much smarter than little old me told us no one cares about the Andrew Giles stuff. The budget was fantastic. You know, the economy's still moving on. Are we starting to see people just not buying the BS anymore, or, frankly, there is not an election this weekend? So you can say whatever you want, and then we'll see what happens when it actually counts. How have you interpreted the numbers?
Look, I think this government's on thin ice with people, and they're primarily on thin ice because they haven't lived up to the promises they made to the Australian people. They said, Anthony Albanese said it would be easier under him. He said things would be cheaper under him, and clearly they haven't been. We've had record or inflation we haven't seen for a generation. As I said before, real wages going back to 2011 levels. People have gone back more than a decade in just the 2 years of this government. So that's principally the reason they're on thin ice. And then, look, yes, on top of that, you've had this scandal. And look, I can't think of a scandal that has that's been of greater controversy or greater real-world impacts here. I mean, you've had a government decide a policy, this so-called Direction 99, which has allowed the most heinous criminals to stay in this country when they should have been shipped off back to the country of their origin. I mean, it's sickening to read the accounts here of these criminals. They've bashed their partners. They've committed the most heinous acts I'm going to describe against their children or stepchildren. And this government has been responsible for doing that. This minister, and then he's been defended and hasn't. I mean, what do you have to do to be sacked? I mean,
yeah, that's my issue too.
Almost every minister been sacked in the last few years has been sacked for less. And so I think that's my issue, on top of what the broken promises, it really is, I think, a tough time for this government. They're on thin ice.
Like, I think it's a rude awakening about their strategy. Their strategy, which is, no matter how obvious, just put up the wall, never admit defeat, so therefore eventually people just get tired of trying to mount an attack. It's not going to work because people are watching, and as you defend the indefensible, you start to fall into a hole. Let's not get into that. We can do that another time in our life. Daniel Andrews and Mark McGowan. Now, I know that basically every high-ranking official ends up with a little gold medal at some point in time. As premiers, they are entitled to it, but again, good ones, bad ones, they've all got it. It's the citation for public health that sends me legit, like real-world DNA angry, because of the people who died alone, the people who couldn't cross borders and end up taking their own life. There was all of that stuff, right? And yes, that was all considered to be less than whether the blob was going to come around and get everyone. Shouldn't they just be cited as former premier? We don't need to start to put on their version of a CV as the reason why they get the gold medal.
Look, I'm obviously not on the Australia Day Council, so that's a matter for them. They make recommendations that are pretty independent to the Governor-General, who then, of course, I think has to sign them off. I do think that it's important to have Australia Day honours and honours over the King's birthday. I think they're a lovely way of recognising people's service. I hear and respect the calls about the need for sort of the reflection of community members in that. And I certainly know, I want to be really fair about this, I know a lot of politicians on both sides who've turned down their offers of Australia's
it should just be a volunteering
awards. And so I hear, I mean, there were Liberal politicians honoured this I think they were announced this morning, so there were Liberal politicians in the list, so I don't think they can kind of make partisan claims, because there certainly were Liberals in there that I actually thought were really well deserving of their awards that they were given. I also think there's a really important national COVID inquiry happening. I gave evidence before it the other day about the impact on local governments. Well, you know, I think it's important that we have this COVID COVID inquiry. I think it is important that we examine how Australia would respond if there were another significant natural disaster that covered the whole nation, or COVID. So, you know, I welcome their awards. Congratulations to them. Congratulations to the Liberal politicians. It's good.
You're too kind. On these matters, you are too kind, I think. I've got about 20 seconds for you, Matt, on this one. This one, look, again, if one came your way...
They're just premature. These awards are premature. They should have been made to sit through a Royal Commission in public, as you say, and let's just see what everything came out before they got these awards. But it's too late for that. There's a whitewash going on that inquiry as well. Next sitting week, I'll introduce a bill to establish a commission of inquiry onto COVID. Try and get to the bottom of it. I probably won't get the support as usual, but love the support of your viewers and your show, Paul.
Well, that's it. God love you. Well, get in touch with him via his website, all the socials, give him the strength of the arm, and then when it's introduced into the Parliament, we'll give you the number and you can call all of the senators and keep them all on watch. That's a really good thing. We'll make sure that the army is behind you. Oh, he said army. That means militarisation of our politics. No, it was a metaphor. See you tomorrow.